Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of our participants joined from across the region. A very warm welcome to the International Women's Day Celebration 2026, a collaborative initiative of the SAFA Women Leadership Committee and the Confederation of Asian and Pacific Accountants. Today, we gather to honor the remarkable contributions of women in the accounting and finance profession and to reflect on this year's theme for our discussion: the power of the collective gain, collaboration, mentorship, and allyship for women's advancement. To officially commence today's proceedings, it is my pleasure to invite Ms. Chamila Kure, Chairperson of the SAFA Women Leadership Committee. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Chamila Kure for the welcome address.
Thank you, Hasara. Mr. Mohammad Humayun Kabir, President SAFA, Mr. Yong Sok John, President CAPA, CA Prabeen Kumar Jha, Vice President SAFA, Ms. Tyron Ralton, Deputy President IFAC, the keynote speaker today, Mr. Tishan Subasinghe, President CA Sri Lanka, and also panelist on our discussions. Jennifer Lopez, Chief Executive Officer, CAPA, also a panelist on today's discussion. Rebecca Jones, Chief Member Operations, CPA Australia, another panelist. Dinali Jayasinghe, Consultant, Audit and Assurance, Deloitte Sri Lanka, our moderator today. Members of the SAFA and CAPA both, members of the regional professional accounting bodies, members of other professional bodies, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. It is a pleasure to welcome all of you today as we come together to celebrate the International Women's Day, specifically the SAFA Women's Day that we have declared 2 years before as the 15th of March. And this program is alongside a celebration on commemorating that as well. So this day is not only a moment to recognize the achievement of women, but also an opportunity to reflect on how we continue to create environments where women thrive, contribute, and lead. This year's theme, Give to Gain, reminds us of a powerful truth. When we invest in women, when we support their growth, and when we create opportunities for them to succeed, the benefit extend far beyond individuals. Organizations grow stronger, communities become more resilient, and societies move forward together. Alongside the theme this year for International Women's Day, which is Give to Gain, we at SAFA Women Leadership Committee, in collaboration with CAPA, organized this event today under the theme Give to Gain, Unlocking Women Contribution for Collective Prosperity. Women have always played a vital role in shaping families, workplaces, and economies. Yet, for many years, their potential has often been unrecognized or underutilized. Today, however, we are seeing a shift, more conversation, more awareness, and more commitment towards creating space where women can truly contribute their talents and perspectives. But unlocking women's contribution is not just about policies and initiatives. It is about creating a culture of support, opportunities, and collaboration. It is about ensuring that women are not only present in the room, but also heard, valued, and empowered to lead. The concept of given to gain highlights something very important. Progress happens when we give. When we give mentorship, encouragement, opportunities, and trust. When women lift each other up, share knowledge, and open doors for others, we create ripple effect that strengthen entire ecosystem. As this saying goes, when we empower a woman, you empower a community. Across organization and industries, we have seen how women bring innovation, resilience, empathy, and collaboration into workplace. These qualities are not only valuable, they are essential for building sustainable and inclusive growth. However, collectively, prosperity cannot be achieved by women alone. It requires partnership, allyship, and shared responsibility. When men and women work together to support inclusive and equity, we create workplaces where everyone has the opportunity to contribute at their best. International Women's Day is also a moment to celebrate the stories of courage and resilience that women demonstrate every day, balancing responsibilities, breaking barriers, challenging stereotypes, and inspiring the next generation. Each of these stories remind us that progress is built through small action, collective support, and willingness to create opportunities for others. So today, as we celebrate the International Women's Day, let us reflect on how each one of us can contribute to this journey. Whether it is by mentoring someone, advocating for inclusion, supporting a colleague, or simply recognizing the contribution of women around us. Every action counts. Because when we truly embrace the spirit of give to gain, we create a culture where everyone has the chance to grow, contribute, and succeed. On that note, I would like to warmly welcome you all to this special celebration. Hope today's discussion inspire new ideas, meaningful conversations, and renewed commitment towards unlocking the immense potential of women for the prosperity of all of us. Thank you, and I wish every one of you a wonderful and inspiring event.
Thank you, Ms. Kure. Next, it is my honor to invite Mr. Mohammad Harmoon Kabir, President of South Asian Federation of Accountants, to deliver his remarks. Mr. Kabir, the screen is yours. Mr. Kabir, if you can unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Kore, for your, I will say that, insightful introduction of the webinar today. Respected Ms. Terine Rolton, Deputy President IFAC, President CAPA, Vice President SAFA, panel discussions, fellow professionals, distinguished guests, dear participants, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, afternoon, and evening, as the case may be, as we are joining this webinar from the different location from the globe. Happy International Women's Day to you all. It is a profound honor to welcome you to this joint webinar hosted by the South Asian Federation of Accountants, SAFA, and the Confederation of Asian and Pacific Accountant, CAPAC. We are not merely gathering to celebrate the progress, but to catalyze a fundamental shift in how we perceive and value women's contribution to our profession and our work. Today's theme, Give to Gain, Unlocking Women's Contribution for Collective Prosperity, resonates deeply with our professional mission. We must move beyond the compliance mindset and embrace a philosophy of shared society, where the unique strengths of both men and women drive our economics forward. The theme carries a powerful truth that empowering women is no longer just a moral imperative, it is a strategic necessity. When we invest in women, when we give them the space, the tools, and the equity they deserve, the entire ecosystem gains. Diverse leadership leads to more resilient organizations, more innovative industries, more stable national economies. When women gain, families thrive, the global GDP follows suit. Without gender parity, we cannot achieve quality education, decent work, or reduce inequalities. The commitment to gender equity is now becoming a matter of global reporting standards as well. Under IFRS S1 and S2, gender diversity is increasingly recognized as a material human factor. Sustainability is no longer just about carbon footprints. It is about the social footprint of our organization as well. When we report on gender equity through these frameworks, we move from vague promises to transparent, data-driven progress. Investors are increasingly looking at how organizations manage their workforce. A gender-balanced workplace is a resilient one. And through the transparent disclosure encouraged by S1, we demonstrate how inclusivity drives long-term financial stability. The broader application of S1 demands that we report on gender demographics with the same rigor as our financial figures. This ensures that inclusion is lived through the data, not just documented in a policy. At SAFA and within the member bodies like Institute of Chartered Accountants Bangladesh, ICAB, we have moved beyond rhetoric to concrete action. We recognize that the journey to leadership is rarely a straight line. Programs like ICB Ascent have been launched specifically to bridge the gap for young professional members, providing them with the guidance and networks necessary to navigate structural barriers. SAFA is fostering a culture of knowledge sharing, ensuring that the successes and the lessons of our senior leaders, both men and women, are passed down to the next generation of family accountants. To institutionalize the application, the SAFA Women Leadership Award has been introduced. This award is not just a trophy, it is a testament to the excellence of women in our region and a beacon for those who will follow in their footsteps. Distinguished guests, colleagues, and champions of change. While the early feminist literature of our region, like Begum Ruqaya's Sultana's Dream, once used satire to imagine a world of family-led scientific marvels, our goal today is even more ambitious. We seek to build the ladyland of the future not through isolation, but through integration. We envision a society where the ocean of knowledge she wrote about is explored by men and women together, side by side. Let us commit to being more than just allies. Let us be catalysts when we give our time to mentorship and our voice to equity. We gain a profession that is more resilient, more ethical, and infinitely more prosperous. As we prefer to hear from our esteemed keynote speaker, Ms. Taryn Rolton, I invite each of you to listen with an intent to act. Let this webinar be the spark for at least one tangible commitment you will make today to foster inclusion in your own organization. By unlocking women's contribution, we are not just helping women, we are unlocking the full potential of our collective future. Thank you, and I look forward to a vibrant and insightful discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Kabe. We now invite Mr. Yong Sok Jun, President of CAPA, to share his message on his special occasion. Mr. Jun, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. It is my great pleasure to welcome you to the Women's Day Celebration 2026 webinar, a joint initiative between CAPA and the SAPA Women Leadership Committee. First, let me express my sincere appreciation to SAPA and its Women Leadership Committee for this excellent collaboration. Partnerships like this show the strengths of our regional community and our shared commitment to advancing our profession. Also, I would like to recognize our distinguished speakers joining us today. IPEC Deputy President Taryn Rolton, SAPA President Mohamed Humayun Kabir, and SAPA Vice President Praveen Kumar Jha, and my fellow CAPA Board Director Tishan, current President of CA Sri Lanka. And our excellent panel speakers, Camilla Cray, Chairperson of the SAPA Women Leadership Committee, and Rebecca Kepper-Jones, Chief Member Operations Officer at CPA Australia, and our Chief Executive of CAPA, Jennifer, and our moderator, Dinali from Deloitte Sri Lanka. Thank you all for your leaderships and for supporting this important discussion. For those who may be less familiar, CAPA is the regional body representing 29 professional accountancy organizations across from 22 jurisdictions in Asia and the Pacific, representing 2/3 of world's 4 million of professional accountants. Our mission is to strengthen the accountancy profession, advance high-quality standards, and contribute to sustainable economic development across our region. Today's theme, Give to Gain, Unlocking Women's Contribution for Collective Prosperity, is very meaningful. Across the global accountancy profession, women now make up a large part of the workforce. In many CAPA jurisdictions, women represent close to, and in some cases, more than 50% of new entrants to the profession. However, this strong representation is not yet reflected in leadership positions. Women remains underrepresented in senior executive roles, in boardrooms, and in key decision-making positions. This is why discussions like today's are so important. When we support women to reach their full potential, we strengthen not only our organizations, but also our profession and the economies we serve. Diverse leadership brings better perspectives, stronger governance, and more inclusive decisions. In line with CAPA's diversity, equity, and inclusion agenda, we are pleased to use this occasion to begin shaping a women in leadership network. This initiative will help connect, support, and empower women across the accountancy profession, especially the future leaders of our profession. I'm also delighted that the IPEC Deputy President Taryn Ralston will deliver today's keynote address and help us launch this important initiative. Taryn, thank you for your commitment. I understand that you are joining us from the United Kingdom, where it is very early in the morning, probably 5 a.m., and we truly appreciate your time and support. Finally, we celebrate International Women's Day throughout the month of March. I would like to recognize and thank you all the women who contribute so much to the accountancy profession and to our societies. Many of you also balance important responsibilities within your families. Your dedication, leadership, and expertise continue to shape a stronger and more inclusive future for our profession. On behalf of CAPA, I wish all women a very happy International Women's Day. Once again, my sincere appreciation to all our speakers and to SAPA for this excellent collaboration. Thank you, and I wish everyone an inspiring and meaningful session today. Thank you. Now I move to Dinali. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chern. Next, we have the privilege to hear from C.A. Praveen Kumar Jha, Vice President of SAFA. Mr. Jha, please proceed with your address.
Thank you. My heartfelt greetings to the SAFA President, CAPA President, Madam Deputy President of IFAC, who is also the keynote speaker today, Chairperson and members of SAFA Women Leadership Committee, all the distinguished panelists, members of different boards who are attending, and to everyone attending this webinar from all across the region. Ladies and gentlemen, I will use a standard word, good day to everybody. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all as we come together to celebrate International Women's Day and this collaboration between SAFA and CAPA, and to recognize the remarkable contributions of women to our families, to communities, businesses, professions, institutions, and to society at large. Today's keynote theme, Give to Gain, followed by the panel discussion on power of collective gain through collaboration, mentorship, and allyship of women advancement is an excellent choice of topic to celebrate the Women Day. When we give women the opportunity to lead, to innovate, and to thrive, we gain not only stronger businesses, but also more broader prosperous societies. We as a society generally tend to acknowledge and celebrate success in businesses, professions, sports, and politics. When some success happens, then we generally tend to recognize it. However, I believe meaning of give to gain is far beyond celebrating the success only. It is also to recognize women before they achieve, to honor their potential before their success proves it, and to breaking invisible barriers that are coming from generations, especially in our part of the world. True giving doesn't end with offering a job, a promotion, or a forum. It includes nurturing a safe, respectful, and supportive environment where women feel valued, protected, and feel free to participate fully. Giving women a seat at the table, a voice in a decision making, or a chance to lead is not just about fairness, it is about believing in their vision, valuing their wisdom, and trusting their ability to transform society. And when they get an opportunity and a conducive supporting environment, which we all should actually try to strive for it, they give exceptional results. Coming from Nepal, I'm from Nepal. I could cite a very relevant example that's just happened here in Nepal in the last few months. You must be aware, after the Gen Z protests that resulted in toppling of the very powerful elected government in our country, the interim government led by our current Prime Minister, Mrs. Sushila Karki, has successfully held election, which was free and fair, peaceful, and on the scheduled date within 6 months of the great big protest, which was there in the news all around the world. Under her exemplary leadership, where she could negotiate with all the different parties, from the Gen Z protesters whose protests led to the fall of the government, to the then established leaders who were thrown out of the power. She and her team were able to convince everyone to participate in the electoral process. And the fact that election could be held on time within 6 months of the protest is something which is commendable and which has been appreciated by from across the world. This example demonstrates that when we give a chance to a woman for a leadership role and create a conducive environment, we could navigate difficult situations, which would eventually help drive growth and collective prosperity for the country and society at large. There are countless other examples of women-led forums like what we have here already, IFAC, SAFA, CAPA, also professional firms, businesses, enterprises that are creating jobs, fostering innovation, and uplifting communities. These examples also help our younger members believe that big success is within their reach and is achievable. Their success stories remind us that prosperity is not individual but collective, and that women's contributions are essential in building resilient economies. However, I also believe there is still a lot of work to be done in empowering women and encouraging them to take up leadership roles, especially in our part of the world. Hence, the panel discussion topic, which will also talk about collaboration, mentorship, and allyship for women for advancement, is quite relevant. I will not dive into the topic further because there are speakers and who are experts to talk about it. I thank the SAFA Women Leadership Committee, CAPA, and all the women leadership committees of different POs for doing an excellent job in encouraging our members to lead on a continuous basis. Please continue doing it. We, myself, my president, and our entire SAFA board is committed to providing continued support to all the initiatives taken by our committees that encourages our women members to lead. I would also like to commit personally as much as possible by whatever way is required. Finally, as we celebrate this Women Day, I would urge everyone to reaffirm our commitment to recognize women talent, amplify their voices, and to embrace their leadership, and to give to gain. Thank you all for joining us today. I wish everyone a meaningful and inspiring session ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jha. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for today's keynote address. Ms. Taryn Rulton is the Deputy President of IFAC and the Chief Commercial Officer at La Trobe University, Australia. With a career spanning senior executive and CFO roles in both the UK and Australian public sectors, she also brings significant governance experience through various non-executive appointments. A former board member of the Australian Accounting Standards Board, she has contributed extensively to standard setting. Ms. Rulton is a long-standing member of CANS, having chaired its Victorian Regional Council and currently supports its ethics and integrity framework. Please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker, Ms. Taryn Rulton.
Thank you so much. And thank you very, very much for having me here and giving me the opportunity to speak with you. As from the introduction, I'm Taryn Rulton, the Deputy President of the International Federation of Accountants. And thank you, Jennifer, for the invitation to speak today, and to the South Asian Federation of Accountants, SAFA, and the Confederation of Asian and Pacific Accountants, CAPA, for hosting today's conversation. As key network partners of IFAC, you convene leaders from across South Asia and Asia Pacific, regions where the choices we make about talent, inclusion, and leadership will echo globally. I spend much of my time thinking about governance, how we build trust, how we make decisions in the public interest, and how we keep our profession relevant in a fast-changing world. And that's why that matters today, because inclusion isn't a nice to have, it's a governance issue, as we heard from our opening remarks, because who's in the room shapes what risks we see, what trade-offs we make, and who ultimately benefits from the decisions that we take. And if you've ever sat on a board or an executive committee, you'll know the moment I mean. One piece of a missing perspective can change the entire decision. That little question that someone asks can just change things, and the decision it's a huge change, and it's fantastic to see. It can be the difference between a policy that works on paper and one that works in real life. And so from a business perspective, when we talk about women's participation, we're talking about decision quality. Of course, when we talk about it from a human perspective, there are many, many more long-standing benefits. So let me start with a question. When you hear the theme, give to gain, what do you think we need to get better outcomes? Is it time, opportunity, or influence? And so wherever you're listening from, I'd invite you to think of one person who opened a door for you. An introduction, a stretch role, maybe a quiet word of confidence, and hold that name in mind, because I'll come back to it. While you think of that, a quick word on IFAC. We're the global organisation for the accountancy profession. We represent millions of professional accountants through member organisations in almost every country of the world. We work closely with our network partners, including CAPA and SAFA, to strengthen the profession, support high-quality standards, and advance the public interest. At its best, accountancy is a trust profession. We help capital flow. We help governments and organisations make better decisions. And we help societies invest for the long term. And with our move into sustainability reporting, we are also shining a light on equity and inclusion and doing things better for the world. So ensuring we capture the full cost of doing business and show what that means in our reports. So here's my answer to the question I gave you. I believe what we give is the opportunity to participate fully and lead. It could be making room, sharing networks with someone, and redesigning work so careers don't stall. From this, we improve decision quality, we strengthen trust in institutions, and we build more sustainable growth. And for me, that is give to gain in action. In the next few minutes, I'll move through 3 short parts. First, a little of my own path, because it explains why I care so much about this topic. Second, one lesson from parental leave about how systems really change. And thirdly, sponsorship, because it's one of the most practical ways any of us can give to gain by opening doors for others. And as I speak, I'd encourage you to listen for one practical idea you can act on in the next month. not someday, but this month. Because small actions repeated are how cultures change. So I didn't follow a traditional path into accounting. And I mention that because many of us, especially women, we build careers through pivots, pauses, and reinvention. And if that's been true for you too, well, you're in good company. I began my life working in a large UK bank and in healthcare. In my mid-20s, I made a decision that changed everything. I moved from a small town in the country to a city. I went to university, I retrained, and I joined the accounting profession later than many of my peers. And I started in audit with a Big Four firm. After I qualified, I emigrated to Australia on a skilled migration visa. And it reinforced for me how portable and powerful our qualification can be, and why global consistency, strong standards, and good governance matter. Because trust travels across borders only when the institutions around it are credible. And so over time, I moved from public practice into industry, and then into the public and not-for-profit sectors. I've worked in policing, health, and education. Today, I hold some board and committee chair positions, and I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at La Trobe University in Melbourne. And my work is fundamentally about creating value, protecting value, and reinvesting that value back into communities, which is another way of describing stewardship. And alongside that, I've stayed deeply involved in the profession. As was mentioned, I've been a standard setter, I've had governance roles, and now I'm at IFAC, because strong institutions matter. When markets are volatile and expectations are rising, governance is what turns good intent into consistent outcomes. And so I share that background because it reflects a reality many women recognise. Careers are rarely linear. If we want the best talent to thrive, the system has to work for people whose lives include caregiving, pauses, changes, and new starts. And we have to treat that as normal, not exceptional. My path required taking big risks and betting on myself. I want to make this easier for others so that people who are not in the position to be able to take those risks can also take part. So let me turn to two practical examples of give to gain. The first one is parental leave and how it changed the system, and how that benefits families and organisations, and why sponsorship accelerates women's advancement, and how we can actively sponsor others to lift overall performance. Both examples are about collective prosperity, because when the rules of work become more workable and when opportunity is shared more deliberately, everyone gains: teams, firms, markets, and communities. If we want to gain from women's talent and keep them in the workforce, we need to provide flexibility to enable them to do so. Because it starts with acknowledging a simple truth. Most people will have periods in life when they need to care for someone else, or when someone else needs to care for them. We're really starting to see these expectations from our younger workforce in many countries, as they have seen the sacrifices women have made to progress, and they want something different. They want more. And it's fantastic that that expectation is there and we can build on it. Access to parental and family leave still varies widely by country, by sector, and organisation. In many places, women continue to carry most caregiving responsibility, often at significant personal and professional cost. But change is happening, and it's instructive. When men are encouraged and supported to take parental leave, rather than just the women in the workforce, flexibility becomes legitimate. Career breaks become normalised, and talent is retained rather than lost. In my own teams, I've supported men to take real caregiving time, sometimes working part-time while their partners remain in full-time leadership roles. Those arrangements don't just benefit the families. They strengthen organisations by keeping experienced people engaged and by making flexibility part of the culture and not a favour. Because when organisations don't design women around work around real lives, Women often enter the profession and then we leave mid-career for roles that offer the flexibility we need. It keeps our wages low and it stops us progressing and bringing our talent into the workforce. Because I really do believe what we don't have is a talent problem. The talent is there. It's a system problem. And systems can be redesigned and changed. So what does good actually look like in practice? In my experience, a few basics can make the difference. We want leave that is accessible, so a clear policy and a simple process, and it's equitable. It's available and encouraged for all genders. A re-entry plan that protects role scope and pay and includes a realistic ramp-up period. You can't just leave, well, you don't have to just leave, come back, and suddenly everything's the same as it was before. We accept that there are changes and you may need to transition, and that's okay. Flexible work that is genuinely workable and is designed around outcomes, not just performative hours. Let's look at the results. And leaders who role model that, because culture follows what leaders do and not just what they say. So when those basics are in place, the gains compound. Fewer experienced people are lost mid-career, stronger pipelines come into leadership, and more economic participation is experienced across the community. And these are benefits that really show up in long-term resilience as well as well-being. And caregiving isn't only about newborns. It could be aging parents, a partner's illness, a child with additional needs, or a family crisis that arrives without warning. So just take a moment to think about your own workforce and your own team. And I wonder how many people are carrying something like that right now, quietly. So when we see more men taking parental leave, that's not a side story. It's evidence of culture change. Women advocating for flexibility have helped reshape work in ways that benefit everyone. That's give to gain. We gave energy to change a system that wasn't working. And the gain is broader well-being, higher retention, and more resilient organisations. And I was so happy to hear the men name the value of this out loud. The gentlemen we had speaking at the start are our presidents and supporters. Inclusion cannot be carried only by the people who have been excluded. When leaders with influence, often still men, speak up for equitable policies and model them, change accelerates. And so I really do thank you for your words. There's another dimension we often overlook. People return from caregiving with extraordinary capability. Prioritization, resilience, empathy, and ability to manage complexity are things they have all experienced heavily in that period. And those are leadership skills. When organizations fail to recognize that, they leave value on the table and they weaken their future leadership pipeline. Now that's the system level. Let's shift to the individual level. Something we can each do, regardless of our job title, and that's sponsorship. See, mentorship matters, but sponsorship changes outcomes. A sponsor doesn't just give advice. A sponsor uses their reputation, influence, and networks to create opportunities, putting your name forward, backing you publicly, and taking a measured risk on your potential. In my own career, sponsorship made a decisive difference. It was someone saying, put Taryn on that project, or she should be in that room. And I learned to do my part too, to state my aspirations clearly, even when it felt very, very uncomfortable. But I got through it. And let me make it real. I was working in the public sector when someone I respected, who'd seen me lean under pressure, and they knew I was looking to accelerate, to be promoted, and that I was ambitious. He called me and he said, Director of Finance, CFO role is coming up at Victoria Police, and I've put your name forward. I actually replied, oh, I'm sorry, what role was that? Because I didn't even know they were recruiting. But because someone opened that door and just pushed me gently towards it, I stepped into the process and I got the job. And that's what sponsorship looks like in real life. Someone using their credibility to open a door you can then walk through on merit. And the gain is shared because organisations get leaders who might otherwise have been overlooked. What we see consistently across organisations is that women receive less informal advocacy. They get fewer tap on the shoulder opportunities, fewer introductions to influential networks, and less visible backing for that stretch role. And that gap slows progression, even when their performance is strong. And so when sponsorship becomes intentional, what many people call an ambition gap, it often narrows or disappears because opportunity becomes less dependent on who feels comfortable self-promoting and more dependent on capability and potential. And as women, we know we are often encouraged not to push ourselves too hard, not to tell everyone how great we are. I was certainly experienced that I was always taught to be very quiet about my achievements. And that doesn't help in a workforce unless someone comes and helps bring it out. And so one important point is that sponsorship should be generous and fair. The goal isn't to create a new in-group of people. It's to widen the circle completely. And that means being alert to bias and who we naturally notice, using clear criteria for stretch roles, and sponsoring more than one person so that opportunity is not scarce. And if you're looking for a sponsor, a simple approach can work. Tell a leader what you're interested in, what you want to be considered for, and make it easy to advocate for you. Share your next step, your strengths, and 1 or 2 outcomes you've delivered. Sponsorship is often sparked by clarity, and it's often also driven by people who are not your very close circle. It's someone you worked with on something, it may be someone who's seen you, and those links, those less strong links that you're aware of, can be very, very important. And so for those of us in senior roles, giving to gain means being deliberate about sponsorship. So 3 practical actions are to name someone for a specific opportunity, an assignment, a role on a committee, or a speaking slot, and say why you trust that person when you give that name. Open your network, make the introduction, bring that person into the room, and share the context that helps them succeed. Let others see them there and see them as part of that group. And back them publicly. Credit their work, counter interruptions that people may make to them. So unfortunately, that happens sometimes, and reinforce their authority when it matters. This matters acutely where hierarchy and informal networks can strongly shape who gets visibility and who gets trusted with decision-making roles. Sponsorship is a practical way to rebalance that, so that leadership pipelines, committees, and governance tables reflect that talent already exists, and they reflect the world that we live in. The people we serve should be reflected in those areas. Through IFAC and in my executive roles, I have the ability and the responsibility to sponsor others, and I'm convinced of this. If we want strong governance in our institutions and economies, we need diverse perspectives in the rooms where decisions are made. Sponsorship is one of the fastest ways to change who's in the room. And so in the spirit of International Women's Day, here are 2 simple invitations. First is sponsor one woman this year. Put a name forward for something concrete and back her capability. And second, use your influence to improve the system, whether that's normalizing parental leave for all genders, designing flexible work that is truly workable, or measuring progression so that good intentions become real outcomes and resonate for business. And remember that name you held in your mind at the start, that person who opened a door for you. One powerful way to honor that gift is to pass it on deliberately to someone else. Give to Gain is not a slogan, it's a strategy. Women's progress is not a concession, it is an investment, and it pays dividends for us all. Thank you again to the South Asian Federation of Accountants, SAFA, and the Confederation of Asian and Pacific Accountants, CAPA, for your leadership and for bringing us together for this discussion. I'm so looking forward to hearing the panel. And thank you for your partnership with IFAC as key network partners to strengthen the profession in the public interest across your regions and around the world. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rulton, for that inspiring and thought-provoking address. We now transition to our panel discussion titled The Power of Collective Gain, Collaboration, Mentorship, and Alliance for Women's Advancement. Before we begin, let me introduce our distinguished panelists. Our first panelist is a dynamic leader with multiple fellowships across global professional bodies. Ms. Chamila Kure is a distinguished finance professional and multiple fellow member of leading global accounting bodies. She's the first female from the corporate sector elected to the CA Sri Lanka Council and currently chairs the SAFA Women's Leadership Committee. With over 25 years of experience across finance, audit, operations, and shared services, she now serves as General Manager Shared Services at HEMA COE, and she is a respectable speaker and advocate for women's leadership. Our next panelist, Ms. Jennifer Lopez, is the Chief Executive of CAPA, leading a network of over 30 professional accountancy bodies across the Asia-Pacific region. She leads CAPA's strategic direction, global partnerships, and initiatives that promote ethics, quality, and sustainability across the profession. With more than 2 decades of leadership experience, including roles at the British Malaysian Chamber of Commerce and ACCA, she's a Malaysian chartered accountant who began her career at PwC. Ms. Jennifer is widely recognized for her commitment to collaboration, ethics, and strengthening the profession's impact across the region. Our third panelist, Ms. Rebecca Keppel-Jones, is the Chief Member Operations Officer at CPA Australia, overseeing member services, professional development, business development, and global service delivery operations. She has also led CPA Australia's learning, innovation, and professional standard functions. With over 15 years of public practice experience across the UK, Canada, and Australia, Ms. Rebecca is a fellow of CPA Australia and a passionate advocate for diversity and inclusion, having founded CPA's Families Network and Melbourne's Yara Network. Our next panelist, Mr. Tishan Subasinghe, the President of CA Sri Lanka. He's a fellow member of CA Sri Lanka and an attorney at law. With over 28 years of experience, he serves as Managing Director of Moore Consulting Private Limited and Joint Managing Partner of Moore IR, with international exposure through PwC offices in New York, Philippines, the Botswana. He also contributes to professional through roles at SLASMB, the SEC, and regional bodies such as CAPA and SAFA. Our moderator this evening is Ms. Dinali Jayasinghe, consultant in audit and assurance at Deloitte Sri Lanka, an award-winning young professional and lecturer recognized with the SAFA Rising Women Student Award and the CA Sri Lanka's President's Award. She's also a top-ranking academic performer and an inspiring communicator, deeply committed to empowering young professionals in the field. Ladies and gentlemen, let's begin our conversation with these exceptional leaders.
Thank you so much, Hasara. Hello, everyone. A very warm welcome to all of you joining us today for the special International Women's Day 2026 panel discussion, jointly organized by South Asian Federation of Accountants Women Leadership Committee and Confederation of Asian and Pacific Accountants, CAPA. It is truly a pleasure and privilege to moderate today's conversation on a topic that is both timely and essential for the future of our profession and our workplaces. International Women's Day is not only a moment to celebrate the achievements of women around the world, but also an opportunity to reflect on how we can collectively create environments where women can thrive, lead, and shape the future. This year's theme encourages us to think about the power of collective gain, reminding us that progress happens when we work together through collaboration, mentorship, and supportive institutional structures. Today's discussion will explore several key dimensions on this theme, including the role of mentorship, the strength of peer supporting networks, the importance of male allyship in the workplace, and the impact of organizational policies and leadership practices in creating inclusive and equitable environments. Through this conversation, we hope to highlight how collective efforts across genders, generations, and institutions can create meaningful and lasting change. To begin our discussion, let's start with mentorship, which plays a crucial role in shaping leadership journeys. Rebecca, I would like to begin with you. Mentorship can often play a transformative role in one's career journey. How has mentorship shaped your personal or professional journey, and what key qualities make these relationships truly impactful for developing future women leaders? Over to you, Rebecca.
Thanks, Denali, and thank you to everyone for inviting me onto the panel discussion today. I'm really pleased to be here. I have been privileged to benefit from mentorship over the course of my career. So I obviously started in sort of professional services, working in large accounting firms, and they've got lots of different levels in an accounting firm, and so you do benefit from working with, obviously as a new graduate, working with seniors and then managers and directors and partners. So I certainly had a lot of access to mentorship in the accounting practices that I worked in, and then even also at CPA Australia, I've had access to mentors as part of that, as part of the roles that I've got here. I've had many types of mentors. So I've had both informal mentors and a formal mentor. When I was working for PwC in Australia, I was part of a formal mentoring program, and that mentor was from outside of the organisation. So I guess the other lenses that I've had mentors that are both inside an organisation but outside an organisation, which is really valuable because they often bring a different perspective, and they're not tied up in potentially the politics of the organisation, and they don't sort of have that lens. So it's quite a different conversation when someone is outside of the organisation. And the other element of the mentorship is that I've had both female and male mentors. So both have given me incredible advice and support for different types of challenges or opportunities that I was facing in my career. Some of the great insight that I've received from mentors is, trying to look at that big picture and what I want to do in my career and what I don't want to do in my career. So I certainly think mentors can just offer a different perspective on what you want in your career and what you don't want in your career. And I think that's as important as it is what you want in your career. I'm also a mentor to many mentees, and I actually find that being a mentor myself is incredibly valuable. I think it's valuable to the mentee, but I get a lot from that as well. And I think it's about this kind of give to gain concept that we're talking about today. I want to give back. I want to create a legacy. And so not only have I've had wonderful mentoring myself, but I find as a mentor, I can also give back to that next generation as well. And just picking up on Taryn's point earlier about sponsorship. So I've been lucky to have mentors, but I've also had sponsors as well. And I do agree that mentors play a really important role, but sponsors are certainly really valuable in a workplace because they do enable you to take on additional opportunities, and they are talking about you when they're not in the room. So yeah, so I've been really lucky to have mentors in my career.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, for sharing that perspective and highlighting the importance of meaningful mentorship relationships. Building on that idea, it is also important to consider how organizations can formalize and strengthen mentorship opportunities. Jennifer, turning to you. What gaps still exist in formal mentorship systems today, and how can organizations design strong mentorship pathways that genuinely support women's leadership development?
Thank you, Denali.
Very good afternoon and good morning to everyone watching. And what I would like to just echo my president to say thank you to SAFA and the SAFA Secretariat for putting on this, co-organizing this webinar, as well to all the speakers. I'm actually very honored to be on the same panel with some distinguished speakers. So your question, Ravi, I think I have had the opportunity to be part of a formal mentorship and also informal ones. So in part of the formal one, which is in the organizations, I think in many organizations, in my observation, most of these mentorships have become rather administrative than relational. So it's like something nice to be done, but I think sometimes the mentor and mentee itself, they fail to see why it's being done. So very important is, when you're getting a mentor, it has to be someone who is passionate to be mentor. Not every leader can be a mentor, right? So in some organizations, it's like a part of requirement that certain level of leaders have to be mentors for the mentees. And sometimes, it doesn't work. So that's the gap I've seen, who the mentor is, getting the right mentor. And then, if you're part of a big organization, then it's easy to have very structured mentorship, right? But I think many of the audience who may be watching may not be part of big organizations. So how do you do that? For me, my advice is that if you do not have a structured mentorship within organizations, then you need to also look outside the organization, you yourself, right? If you have the ambition, you need to step forward to see who can be your mentor in your career path, in your professional journey, right? So it's not just the organization that's providing the opportunity for mentorship. You and I, even at different levels of our career, we can look for mentors who can guide us to our next part. So that's the gap I see, the understanding of what a mentorship should be. Secondly, the other gap that I see to make mentorship successful, I think one of our speakers today mentioned this, is briefly mentioned, is how do we measure the success of it, right? How are we measuring? How are we tracking? So one of the measurement is talent retention and talent, how do you develop the person? So that's a gap that I see. There is mentorship, but how are we measuring that mentorship program, right? So and then the last one that I like to mention, for this question is that the biggest gap in mentorship, and Taryn mentioned this, Rebecca mentioned this, and I actually really wanted to mention this on the biggest gap, it's sponsorship. It doesn't stop for women and for anyone. Mentorship, it's for you, for the mentor to advise you for your learning and development. But sponsorship is where the doors are open. So if you can find, a sponsor, that person who's passionate about you, who sees your talent, who sees opportunities, will open doors for you. That way, women need to have mentors and sponsors. So the structures are very much focusing on mentorship. But I think today we bring in to the discussion about sponsors, how important they are. Young people may not know about this. I can tell you, when I was in, until someone actually mentioned to me, Jennifer, you need a sponsor. So really, mentorship must come with sponsorship. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, on those valuable insights. Yes, of course, while mentorship plays an important role in shaping leadership journeys, organizational culture and policies are equally critical in creating environments where women can truly thrive. Chamila, I'd like to bring you into the conversation here. Organizations often have well articulated diversity and inclusion policies, yet sometimes there can be a gap between policy and practice. How can organizations ensure that inclusion policies translate into real life experiences for women rather than remaining into commitments on paper? Over to you, Chamila.
Thank you, Denali. It's very important question because Many organizations today have well-written inclusion policy, but real impact happen when the policies are translated into everyday exercises that employees genuinely feel that in the workplace. So true inclusion doesn't come through documentation. It happens when inclusions become part of the organization culture, the leadership behavior, and the way decisions are being made. First, perhaps maybe most important factor is leadership taking accountability. Inclusion becomes meaningful when the leaders actually actively championing it. Organization needs to ensure the leaders are measured and given accountable and held accountable for building such environment. And it is said, what measured get managed. So you need to make sure that there is measurements in place in the organization where inclusions become priority. Again, another aspect to look at that is, how do you embed inclusion into daily practices? Policies may remain at the strategic level, but it needs to get translated into how organizations uh, actively participated in the activities through their actions. How they reflect on hiring, how they promote, how they develop talent. These small things, but that passes a very strong message as to how that strategies are being translated into day-to-day actions. This will send a message to your employees. It's not just on the paper. It gives us opportunities, and it shows that leadership actually have taken into practice in the organizations. Again, another aspect that I would wanted to add is, how do you spend time? How do you give opportunities to listen to women voices? Organizations also needs to understand and live the experience of their employees. This can be done through surveys, listening sessions, and anonymous feedback channels that will bring out if there is a gap between the policies that the companies have introduced, but when it comes to implementation, whether there is actually effective translation of those policies into action. And I think almost all the speakers spoke about the mentorship and sponsorship. And I think that also plays a major role in translating policies into real actions in any organizations. And finally, I think the organization also have a huge responsibility building an inclusive culture, because if you don't have the culture, your policies will only remain in the document and it not facilitate real actions. So it's all to the organization end of the day to make sure the intention is translated to a consistent actions, and leadership is committed for that. You don't keep it at a strategic level, you take it on to day-to-day action, and you support your people to experience it through the action that you take on daily basis.
Thank you so much, Shamila, for sharing those thoughtful perspectives on turning inclusion policies into a reality within the organizations. So I think Rebecca also mentioned about the male mentors she had along her way, which brings us into this discussion. So another critically important component is collective progress of male allyship, particularly in professional environments where leadership structures may still be evolving towards greater gender balance. Tishan, I'd like to invite your perspective here. What does effective male allyship look in practice within workplaces, And how can allies actively help remove structural barriers faced by women?
All right, Dinali, thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for the organizing committee for inviting me to be a panelist. First of all, now about the theme of the Women's Day, International Women's Day this year again. So just to sum up, it's all about giving opportunities, support, respect, resources to women so that the society gets stronger institutions, better economies, and more inclusive communities. Now, if I speak from the Sri Lankan perspective, I think we are lucky. The first ever female prime minister was produced by Sri Lanka, late Mrs. Sirimahu Bandaranaike. Not only that, now if I take our profession, we are at crossroads because CA Sri Lanka, our membership has selected the first female vice president in the during the history of last 66 years. Right, so my vice president Anoji happened to be the first ever female vice president of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka. Not only that, now for the first time we have a female auditor general in Sri Lanka, right, in our history. Then our CEO, CA Sri Lanka CEO, you know, again a female, a lady, Lakmani. So in that context, I think you know, I'm truly happy to see that from the Sri Lankan perspective. I think we have given the due recognition, and we see the gender equality and the way that things are moving. Perhaps time to time we may have to request for a men's day, right? A day for the men, not women's day, right? So now in terms of addressing your question, Dinali, now the allusion, it's all about the use influence, voice, and decision-making power to create fair opportunities for women. So in that context, you know, let me just share my thoughts under few areas. First one is advocating for equal opportunities. When I say equal opportunities, it could be in terms of fair recruitment, promotion, and pay practices. To be frank with you, you know, wherever I have worked, I didn't have to interfere or involve because I have seen all these practices. I've worked for PwC, BDO around Movers. I'm also serving on certain boards, which includes a bank and previously included an insurance company also. And I have seen, you know, all these practices. Perhaps I'm lucky to see that kind of an environment, and perhaps I'm lucky to work in that kind of a gender neutral environment. Then second one, challenging bias and stereotypes. In my case, I didn't have to do it anywhere that I have worked. So this challenging bias and stereotypes, it includes leadership, speaking up when unconscious bias, discriminatory remarks, or exclusionary behavior occur in the workplace. Because, you know, silence often sustains structural barriers. So that's about the perspective of challenging bias and stereotype. Then third one, if I may highlight, sponsorship and mentorship. I think we have spoken a bit on this area today. I'm not going to go into detail in that context. Then supporting inclusive policies. When I say inclusive policies, flexible work arrangements, parental leave for both genders, and safe reporting mechanisms. So from the Sri Lankan context, perhaps parental leave for both genders, yeah, maybe there's improvement because paternal leave policies are not that much prevalent in organizations in Sri Lanka. There's an area for improvement, because that's also important to ensure gender equality, to share the commitments, the responsibilities in the household. Then creating inclusive workplace culture. That's about ensuring women's voices are heard in meetings, giving proper credit for ideas, and encouraging participation in decision-making spaces, etc. So there are also, interestingly, now when I was getting ready for this particular session, I was thinking whether I had come across any of such situation based on gender where I had to interview, or whether I had kept a blind eye. The answer was no, actually. Maybe because of the sound work environments within which I had the opportunity to work. So Dinali, these are my views on the given question.
Yes, of course, Tishan. Thank you very much for sharing those very important insights on the role of allies in shaping more inclusive workplaces. So that brings us to the end of our first round of questions, where we explored different perspectives on mentorship, peer support, and role of allyship in advancing women's leadership. But as we know, awareness is only the starting point. The real impact comes when allyship moves beyond intention and becomes consistent action in everyday workplace practices. So, staying with you, Tishan, let me ask you a follow up question. Many
Yeah.
organizations talk about allyship, but real progressions require action. How can men move beyond awareness to become consistent and meaningful allies for women's advancement?
Yeah, moving from awareness to action requires intentional, consistent behavior. I think it should come within. Now, in my case, as a leader, it comes from my system, from within, because some of you would have heard this story before. When my father passed away, he was at the age of 49 and my mother was 39. My father was an entrepreneur, and after that, in fact, my mother, who happened to be a housewife, ran the business of the family those days. She wanted me to study. And in that context, actually, during the process, I tend to develop a lot of respect towards women, because I saw how my mother was dealing with various challenges from the society and how she looked at the issues. And I saw how my father managed the business. I was 19 years old when my father passed away. And then how my mother managed situations, challenges. In fact, in fairness to my mother, she was a better decision maker than my father. I respect my father, no doubt. But then when I compare, that time only I really understood as a teenager the potential of a woman, because she was merely a housewife. When I first went to bank the week after my father's funeral, my mother didn't know how to draw a check at the bank. I didn't know. I was soon after my school. I could remember the bank manager helped out in that regard. Then she started like that. Then she was managing 267 employees that time, better than my father. So in that context, I think it came into my system. So wherever I also started working, based on that, perhaps because of that memory, I trust the work delivery of women. And if you take my organization, I have 2 female partners, and when it comes to my consulting arm, female director. So I really trust their work, and sometimes I don't have to even look at the outcome. I know the things are moving, and it helps me a lot in terms of contributing my time for various other activities, including serving the profession, the fraternity. So in this context, my advice, because in my case, it's a personal experience. That personal experience would have inculcated in my leadership and decision-making style. But then for those men who did not have that kind of unique experience in life, what I can say, they can educate themselves continuously. Because men should actively learn about gender bias, workplace inequality, and the experiences of women colleagues instead of relying on women to explain these issues. One of the areas that I can see in our context, Sri Lankan context, our accountants, our female accountants, after some time, perhaps they are quitting the profession and they become housewives managing the household because it's coming out of culture. Then the husband looks after. They may be well off. There may not be a necessity to necessity for the wife or the female partner to get into work because of the prosperity, I don't know, within the family. But then from the country's perspective, from the country's sustainable development perspective, from our economy's perspective, I think it's a wastage. In that context, I think we should encourage, irrespective of the financial stability, we should encourage women to take part in the development activities of the country. The best possible way. It's not about having means, but beyond that, beyond our personal lives, how best we can contribute to the country to uplift the economy, right? Then use influence responsibly. Leaders must use their position, authority, and networks to advocate for women in promotion discussion, leadership pipelines, and strategic opportunities. Then hold organizations accountable, supporting measurable goals such as gender diversity targets, pay equity, audits, and transparent promotion processes helps turn commitments into results. These are some of the areas. Then going beyond those areas, practice everyday allyship. Small actions matter, amplifying women's contributions in meetings, ensuring equal speaking opportunities, and challenging interruptions or dismissive behavior. My personal experience, actually by serving on boards, sometimes female directors, they bring different perspectives because the way that a woman looks at a problem could be totally different to the way that we are looking at. And it's really adding value. These are my personal experiences. Even in my own work, sometimes when we discuss about projects, issues, etc., the perspectives that our female employees or directors or partners that they are bringing in, it's giving a totally different perspective sometimes. And we haven't even sometimes thought of those angles. So in terms of that, there's a lot of value addition. Then commit to long-term change. Allyship is not a one-time initiative, but a continuous commitment to fairness, equity, and inclusive leadership. So Dinali, these are my views on the given question.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much, Tishan, also sharing the insights on allyship, the importance along with your personal experience as well. And moving on, while individual actions are essential, institutional support and policies also play a crucial role in shaping inclusive workplaces. Rebecca, returning to you, which organizational policies or leadership practices have you seen make the greatest impact in creating gender balanced and inclusive workplaces? Over to you, Rebecca.
Thanks, Denali. I won't touch on something that Taryn I spoke to at length a little bit earlier around the leave policies because I do think they are very impactful, but Taryn sort of talked about that already. The one policy that is very important, I think, is succession planning as a process. So as an organisation, we should be looking at our talent pipeline and deliberately looking at how we ensure that we've got gender balance in our talent pipeline. And I don't think all organisations do succession planning very effectively. And it is, I think, it's a critical enabler of a gender balanced workplace. And so I would encourage organisations to do succession planning and to make sure they're applying an equity and diversity lens to that succession planning, not just gender, but other elements of diversity as well. So I think that's a really important sort of framework and policy that's critical for organisations. The other one is flexibility. So I know we talked about that in the context of leave and caregiving policies, but flexibility for me. So I'm a mother of two relatively young children, and from an organisational perspective, I can give my best if I've got the flexibility that I need to both balance my home life as well as my work life. And so I do think maintaining flexible work policies is critically important. And that's not just being able to work from home, that's being able to balance the type of hours that you work to enable you to sort of do your job, but also have your caregiving responsibilities as well. And then the final one from an organisational perspective from my lens is it sounds cliche, but women in leadership programs are impactful. I also had the privilege of going through a women leadership program when I worked at PwC in Canada, and it's about education. So we learned a lot about sponsorship in that program. And so, that was 10 years ago for me. And so I learned about sponsorship quite early on in my career. And so I was able to sort of say, okay, well, how do I put this into action myself? And it gave me agency as well. And so I do think leadership programs that are deliberate and that are focused on the key elements of development do make a difference. And I certainly benefited from that in my career. But I think beyond the organisation, there are things that as a society we need to be doing better to enable more gender balanced workplaces. And I was on a panel last week, and one of the things that kept coming up was childcare. And so I think there's all the policies in the world that an organisation can establish. But as a society, if we're not enabling organisations to leverage those policies, it's really challenging. And so I think there's certain things that we need to do with an organisation, but there's certain things that we need to do from a policy and a government perspective to support them. And the number one thing for working women, particularly when the children are younger, to enable them to be back in the workforce is childcare. And so I just leave that as a thing for us to continue to advocate for in each of our respective jurisdictions, because without childcare, it becomes very difficult for women to get back into the workforce in a really meaningful way.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, for highlighting the importance of government aspect as well. So policies and leadership commitments certainly set the framework for inclusion, but the day-to-day support that professionals receive from their peers can often make a real difference in navigating challenges and building confidence. Chamila, let me bring you back into the conversation. Why are peer networks particularly important for women's professional growth, and how do these communities help build resilience and confidence throughout a career?
Yeah, Dinali, I believe peer networks plays a very important role in women's professional growth because they create strong sense of support, connection, and shared learning. In many workplaces, women sometimes find themselves in the minority, particularly in the leadership and decision-making spaces. In those moments, peer network becomes incredibly valuable because they can create space where women feel belong in that community and they can openly share their experiences and challenges. And also these conversations, when you have these conversations, you realize very often that these challenges are not only unique to you. Hearing the other stories, similar experiences help women to normalize these challenges that they feel I am facing, and to move on with their feeling of isolation, because then it gives an opportunity for her to understand it's not only me, many people are on the same journey. Again, another aspect that I think peer work network would support is in terms of knowledge sharing. When you share your journeys, share your experiences, challenges, it helps the women to understand and get knowledge about certain things that they have not had experiences and knowledge before. Sometimes some practical advices that doesn't comes in the formal training sessions that we usually get into when it comes to a leadership role or any specific skill set, maybe something that comes free of charge when you talk to females or peers who are in a similar kind of an environment. And also sometimes we don't really give emphasis onto this, but it creates opportunity for you to build confidence. Many women tend to look at things, we've heard this story, we wait till we tick all the boxes to get into certain things, whereas the men when they're half ready, you get in there and you raise your hands and take on to opportunity. But things like the networking, peer networking will get you to a feeling. Somebody says you, okay, you're ready, go for it, you can do it, will give you a bit of a confidence for you to get into things that you're maybe not comfortable at the time that you expect that to come in your way, but it pushes you to, okay, I'll take it and see how I could turn it around. I would learn through the journey, because some people before me has also done that. And we spoke about things like you take career breaks, and you have setbacks in your journeys. There had been ups and downs in your journeys. So this kind of network sometimes help you to build that resilience also, because you have real life experience where people have gone through difficulties, come back, and they're really doing well, which gives you real examples of things that can really be done when you have support. So I do believe networking, peer networking, is a powerful instrument that create an environment for women to be empowered, and we should support, and we are doing it today itself. This collaboration with the SAFA Women's Leadership Team and CAPA, we are trying to create that network amongst all of us to make sure anywhere in the world there is support that is coming to you if you wanted to ask for a support and experience sharing.
Thank you so much, Shamila, in highlighting the importance of peer networks. So this brings us to the broader theme of today's discussion. Jennifer, I'd like to invite you to reflect on the theme of this year's International Women's Day. The theme, Give to Gain, Unlocking Women's Contribution for Collective Prosperity, emphasizes how empowering women leads to economic, social, and organizational gains for all. In your experience, how does empowering women create broader economic, social, and organizational benefits for everyone?
Thanks, Dinali. I think from what we have heard from the panelists and our keynote speaker, and in fact our earlier speakers, the theme itself reflects that something that all of us know, all organizations know, that when we invest in women, the benefits are far beyond the individual. At organizations, it does improve talent, retention, and innovation. Taryn spoke about governance. That's the truth. We heard that, importance of women on board, how a simple question gets you asking about how, the decisions may change, risk management. At social level, women, stronger families, and just now I was inspired also by Tishan's mom, who actually is a proof of how women actually contribute to their organization, the economy, and the community, where the staff strength increased. So that's undoubtedly, in investing in women does bring the benefit. But I think the question, that we need to ask and action on is, who needs to, support this initiative? And I'd like to, give my opinion that more can be done in terms of investing in women, empowering women, so that, we give more to gain. And this not just comes from organizations, but it also comes from governments itself. Rebecca mentioned is so important. So I'd just like to share a bit, I know that the time is ticking. In Malaysia, the country that I come from, the organizations, people who advocated DEI, women come back to work. So we advocated to the government to put in policies like flexible work arrangements, incentives for women coming back to work. So that actually escalated the women agenda. So governments and organizations need to take action. It's not just within everyone needs to play a role. And when we talk about allyship, it's not just men. Women themselves need to play a role. Women themselves need to be come forward and share their stories sincerely. So, in my experience, I think we need to create that successful environment, and that different people need to take responsibility and ensure on it. We know that if opportunities is given, women can thrive. I truly believe in diversity and inclusion. Empowering women makes women more involved, creates that equation more. The women can be involved. We know that DEI creates better organizations. We've seen that many successful organizations thrive when they have good policies in place. So I want to, end by saying that the most successful environments are those where people actively invest in developing others. So the culture of this culture need to be shared and need to be taken action by everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. So today's discussion has clearly shown that progress comes through collective effort, through mentorship, allyship, supportive policies, and strong professional networks. And as we come to the end of our discussion, on behalf of Confederation of Asian and Pacific Accountants, CAPA, and South Asian Federation of Accountants Women Leadership Committee, I would like to sincerely thank all our distinguished panelists for sharing their valuable insights today. Jennifer Lopez, thank you for your perspectives on strengthening mentorship and the broader impact of empowering women related to our theme as well. And Chamila Kure, thank you for highlighting the importance of translating inclusion policies into real workplace experience and also highlighting the value of peer networks. Rebecca Keppel-Jones, we appreciate your reflections on mentorship and the organizational practices that help create inclusive workplaces, including your personal experience with your mentors. And finally, Tishan Subasinghe, thank you for sharing your important perspectives on the role of male allyship and how allies can drive meaningful change. And you shared with us wonderful stories about your personal experience as well as ongoing significant achievements within Sri Lankan women leaders. So I hope this discussion inspires each of us to continue supporting and empowering women in our workplaces and communities. Thank you all, and I wish you a wonderful International Women's Day. Back to you, Hasara.
Thank you. Thank you for our keynote speaker, Ms. Rutan, the panelists, Ms. Chamila Kure, Ms. Jennifer Lopez, Ms. Rebecca Keppel-Jones, Mr. Tishan Subasinghe, and the moderator, Ms. Dinar Jayasinghe, for the effective panel discussion under the theme of the power of collective gain, collaboration, mentorship, and allyship for women's advancement. As we conclude this evening, enriching celebration of International Women's Day 2026, we extend our heartfelt gratitude to all our speakers, panelists, organizers, and participants across the region. Thank you for your time, your energy, and your commitment to advancing women in the accounting profession. Together, let us continue to champion collaboration, mentorship, and allyship paving the way for a more inclusive and empowered future. We wish you a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.